and it makes things a lot spicier now.
And it definitely has spiced up the bracket a little bit as we can take a look at those. Jumping over into group letter A first. I guess the first of those two groups goes through. Personnel will be moving on to face the loser of our third set, which will be Hex Mambo and Niflheim Warg. Still going to be a battle for personnel if they want to make it into the second tier of the bracket of play. Remember, we only take 2 from this group. They qualify into the elimination stage bracket, and they'll be the same in Group B as well, which is where this match is going to be taking place between the Aaru Scorpions and Thunderhead on the lower end of that one. Winner of this match will face the loser of the Highland Ravens and Gilded Gladiators, and then between those ones, they'll duke it out. I believe those matchups are going to be tomorrow to see who's going to make it to the second stage of play between these two groups. So we'll take 2 from A, 2 from B. They'll merge into a whole new bracket between themselves there. And we're going to see how they can duke it out for the remainder of their week. And remember, only 2 teams total for the entirety of this event, of the 8 teams that have come here to start this one out, will qualify to the SWC group stage in January. They'll be met by 2 of the NA teams. Will basically be whatever we did for this bracket, we'll reset next week, do it all over again, and then those 4 SCC, the 4 SPL, will battle for the last 4 spots at the SWC. And what a great place it could be. I mean, the Aaru Scorpions, we kind of dial into the beginning of the week as their phase kind of went through there, had a really strong performance throughout their phase 3, able to get themselves 3rd seed, really only behind what we call like probably the most dominating top 2 powerhouse squads up on the opposite side. Whereas a team like Thunderhead, Gore, for the SOC, they've had to kind of battle themselves through a lot of challenger matchups there, a lot of this amateur talent to put them through here. And I think some of this might come down to maybe ItzMarc over into the solo lane for Thunderhead to try and keep Panvich locked down, because in the game yesterday, I felt like Panvich was the name of the game, at least for the Scorpions team.
Yeah, I'm looking at the squad that Thunderhead has lined up. First off, gives me a lot of hope, because if Personalized can put on a show like what we just saw, Thunderhead is technically the seed above them. I have high expectations for them. But yeah, if I'm looking for success, I'm looking at the solo lane for them just because of the matchup that they're going to have to deal with. But I'm also looking at the duo lane. And a little bit towards Rinnegan in the middle. Pretty much everybody but Shadow. I think Shadow's had a decent game, but like Galadriel looked really solid. We got to see Rinnegan with a couple of big highlight moments for him. But like you said, trying to keep down and maybe find success against the Scorpions requires a little bit of a step up, right? And I think Mark is going to have their work cut out for him. Good picks yesterday. A lot of it today, I think, is going to come down to a little bit of draft, but also a lot of what they can bring into the game. Because, you know, you see some things that feel less makey-sensey in the terms of way things have been going. Like that Serket, don't necessarily want to see that. I liked what we just saw from Personnel, where it was really solid drafts that then translated into to really good play. I think that Thunderhead can do themselves a big favor by winning the draft immediately. Then they have to execute on it, but I think if you can start this off on the right foot, that immediately gets you into a good note.
Well, at least for the Aaru Scorpions, even despite their losses up yesterday in their match kind of on the upper end of the bracket, now find themselves in the lower. But Panvich, kind of the standout player on the Aaru Scorpions yesterday through the Hades in his games. I think he had like a 9-0 performance in one game and a strong game number 2 as well. So despite the Scorpions losing, it seems that, maybe pun intended on this one, their pillar does come through Panvich. This play was absolutely insane, the fact that he comes out of this one alive in a 3v1 scenario and even finds 1 kill to boot with that and then sets up for the double after. This man and Rapio are probably the 2 I'm going to be staring at the most for the Scorpions roster.
Yeah, I think that when we talked about this squad, you know, Predss, Davey, they all come to mind. Gunter comes to mind. Rapio has to come to mind. But realistically, yesterday, Panvich was an absolute menace. It is insane that you were able to have a performance like this on Hades, get the Hades back, have the games that the Scorpions had, even though they lost. I think that the solo lane was just great for them. And so I'm going to keep looking over there. You know, we had highlighted Mark, and this is the reason why. It's less because of what does Mark need to do. It's more how much can you control that guy on the screen. If you can keep Panvich locked away, boxed up, and kind of stifle some of that play, I think that makes it a lot more of an opening for the Scorpions. Or, I'm sorry, in that case, for Thunderhead, to be able to find a win against the Scorpions. Otherwise, you know, they're 3rd seed for a reason. If Panvich is allowed to play that way, we might just be talking about set number 3 pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, whenever it comes down to kind of the, you know, the picks and bans, the drafting and things like that, Normally, we've been seeing like a lot of the Hades kind of bans over at the top level of play. A couple of SPLTs will let through. Seems that the EU SCC has kind of been 50-50 on letting this Hades bounce its way in towards the picks and bans that we jump into now for game number 1. But if I'm Thunderhead, I'm probably not letting Panvich get a second chance to kind of run that Hades again. Really ran the show in game number 1 of their set yesterday for the Scorpions. So probably don't give that pick over to him. Instead, for now, the Scorpions will go ahead, ban away Maui, and Hades taken away by Thunderhead.
That's like you said, that's just a smart ban, just based on how yesterday went, right? I mean, you have to deal with a lot of problems that were thrown at your feet. Don't deal with the Hades, right? You're on an Elim match, right? That's the first 2 of the day. Next 2 are going to be promo, but this one still will dwindle the amount. We went from 8 to 7, now we'll go from 7 to 6. You don't want to start off on the wrong foot. If you get bodied just because you let Hades through immediately, that's going to feel bad. I also like the bans that they're accompanying it with so far. Yamoja, a very solid first pick, even though we haven't seen it as much in the EU area. Some of the other things that were the flavor of the month at the time haven't been as high prioritized, so you don't have to worry about it, right? We're not seeing these weird Heimdall bans that are suddenly letting your Yamojas through or your other top picks through. Those are getting shimmied down. Heimdall's not even in the conversation anymore, and I'm really liking the fact that we've seen them change very heavily from what we last saw in Europe during the SCC to what we're seeing so far this weekend.
Cupid, top pick for the Aaru Scorpions as we quickly speed run through some of the bans out there. Hades, Yamoja, Ymir for Thunderhead, Cernunnos, Set,
Ishtar.
and Maui on the opposite side. And it's maybe surprising to see that the Cupid was kind of the top pick out of there with the Cernunnos banned away. Ishtar, even when Cern is still open, is typically kind of the go-to hunter. So maybe a little strange to see that one kind of given over towards Thunderhead. And what a great dual lane that Thunderhead has set themselves up for. We saw this in game number 2 of our last set, Gore. Athena, Ishtar as a duo. Seems like it could be pretty potent for Thunderhead.
And honestly, because when it comes down to it, with Cernunnos banned, we've had 3 hunters in the conversation right now. Cupid, Cernunnos, Ishtar. If you're only going to ban one, then you pick one. The other one's available. So I think that this is going to be, I mean, good control, right? We talk about the clear already. Athena, very good in terms of taunt, but also adds some good, decent clear for him. Cupid's going to have that, depending on what they throw it there, might be able to balance it out, but Ishtar alone is incredibly solid on that. So top 2 for Thunderhead. I mean, if you're looking for success in picks and bans, I think they're already on that way. Then they get the Daji as well. I mean, one of the most picked, most banned gods in the SPL throughout Phase 3 for a damn good reason. I really like this top 3 for them. We've seen today that Daji isn't always an instant win, right? It's going to be play on field. And so you have to look into the jungle to see what exactly they're going to be doing. But I'm going to give TheRayShadow the benefit of the doubt going into this. I think that is a pickup paired with the other 2 they have. Could give them some really strong team fight.
With the top 3 of Thunderhead, you look to the opposite side for the Aaru Scorpions. The Cupid obviously was that first pick earlier. A couple with Tyr and Thor for a bit of a menace on the right side of the map. So I'm curious to see where the selection will go for Thunderhead to try and throw over in towards that solo lane. And Cthulhu was something that Mark went to a little bit, at least during his previous set, something that he's gone towards, at least during the regular season of play. But as the second wave of bans does roll through, Khepri and Kuzenbo actually banned away by Thunderhead. We did see a little bit of the bow earlier on this week. And then Guan Yu and Hercules. So a lot of focus for the Aaru Scorpions to try and keep this solo laner out. Artio kind of popped its head up earlier on, but we might be actually seeing this Athena maybe transition itself over towards solo, or maybe even the Terra over there. Though we haven't really seen much Terra solo as of recent. Gotta imagine maybe the Athena.
I mean, actually, well, I kind of like the Terra matchup into Tyr specifically, right? I think that that's one that, as long as you got your pillars out, you're feeling pretty confident about your capabilities of sustaining yourself. I think it is very flexible. I think I like the Terra over there. It's also a very European style to pick up the Terra and take her solo. Maybe that's just me having some years long bias for it, but I think it's going to be fun to watch. I still like the pickup. I mean, look, if you're looking team fight, I like where the Thunderhead is at. Then you add some extra healing in there. Look, they've got the sustain. That's a very solid comp. Not dissimilar to maybe something that you could see. I don't know if I want to throw the Titans up there just because the double Guardian might shake that up a little bit. But definitely is something that we've seen not too often in the SPL. The other side, though, is you were highlighting it, when you've got the Thor, you've got the Scylla. Those already feel like big setup playmakers. You know, introducing the Tyr, the Cupid into the mix is a huge deal. It's the Ares that is the only one that draws concern, because we've seen Ares that absolutely drive the game home for their team And we've seen a lot of them in Europe. We've also seen AicyD that fall flat on their face and do nothing for the entire game. So the Scorpions definitely hoping for the former.
Well, will this AicyD feast? Will this AicyD famine? Can they match up to the sustain that Thunderhead has brought to themselves? We jump into game number 1, and to bring it, we've got Dulcin and Mifflin.
That's right, we've already seen one SOC upset today. Are we going to get another? That's the question. So we've moved up as far as seeding goes, Miff. Scorpions number 3 EU SCC seed, and Thunderhead are the number 1 SOC seed. Both the SOC teams fell short against the number 1 and the number 2 SCC teams. So,
I mean, so did all the other SCC teams.
correct. My point is, though, Myth, you're still favoring the Aaru Scorpions, but the question is, how big of a fall-off is there from 1 to 2, 1 and 2 down to the rest of the group? We'll find out and see how competitive the Aaru Scorpions are able to look. Pred's going to use that blink early. He'll find his way to the purple buff. He'll confirm the purple buff.
Oh,
But he is super slow.
oh.
The sprint gets used by Galadriel. Looks like Predss will be fine. A little extra XP, so a nice early start for the Aaru Scorpions.
Yeah, Thunderhead, I think Galadriel may be in a position where he could have confirmed that purple. I believe it had about 50 HP as Davy was approaching it, but resets nonetheless. Doesn't want to take too much damage. Predss sticks in his heels and says, well, Ares is a bit better clear than Athena at this level. He's able to get his away. And that's massive for the duo lane of the Aaru Scorpions, just getting a little bit of additional pressure.
Now, one thing the Des talked about, Myth, and we are fast forwarding to team fight time. Maybe some of this is applicable to
So
laning
early.
phase. I know. I'm just talking about the comp as a whole of Thunderhead. You got a Terra solo, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you've also got a Hell, and then of course there's going to be some individual sustain built in to some of the builds and some of the kits outside of that. But healing is going to be pretty high from Thunderhead here in this game. You have to imagine priority put into anti-heal a bit more than you would normally see.
Yeah, but when you look at the composition from Aaru Scorpion, Scylla's not exactly the best at applying Divine Ruin. We'll likely still pick it up. Divine Ruin is just a phenomenal stat stick, and when you are hitting, it's going to do its work, but it's not that just bit of poke from a range. It's not as if you could just like throw out an Ice Storm like a Merlin does, or some ranged poke consistently. Sikkim, one of your most consistent poke tools, but even then, largely avoidable. Otherwise, I'm looking at the aura defense items, the Contagions, the Pestilence. Those generally will find a little bit more value. Brawler's Beat Stick for Rapio, I think, a pretty smart pickup as well. And if we're talking about auras, I'm thinking Pred's probably going to pick up the majority of them just because of Ares' passive.
Yeah, you would think. There'd be good synergy there. I want to talk about this Ares a bit here, Myth, because on a red buff invade nearly steals it away. I like the way Ares is getting aggressive, trying to steal away buffs. Gets the purple buff early, now looking over at the green buff, but will back away. More so just wasting a bit of time of Thunderhead. But it feels like this Hell comes out late in the draft for Thunderhead. Maybe as a counter to the Ares ultimate, you're hoping that you can group up, avoid those big pulls in. But if you can get those cleanses out early, Myth, maybe opens the door for the Aaru Scorpions to succeed elsewhere in the fights.
Yeah, burn that cleanse, and then all of a sudden Rapio can get active in that backline. And I think Pred's is probably going to be the guy burning cleanse most often. It's the most telegraphed CC in the game. No escape. Everybody knows the timer. If you've played Smite for more than 5 hours, you know the timer of Ares Ultimate. So I trust Renegon to be able to lock that one down pretty consistently.
Do you think World Weaver is less telegraphed than an Ares pull?
World Weaver,
depending on distance, maybe.
Yeah, World Weaver has variables.
Right.
Ares
okay,
pool
that's
has
fair.
no variables.
Right. World Weaver from across the map.
I'll never cleanse it. I'll never know. I'll miss it every. I've Aegis World Weaver wrong more than anybody else on the planet.
I guess it is a bit sneaky. All right, so I'll stick with it. I was just playing devil's advocate, but are expecting to see cleanse used for the Ares pull. That's the first Anvil of Dawn of the game for Rapio. Sends left. Little bit of pressure on AC, but nothing else after the fact. And, that's what you're hoping to see. Thor hits level 5. Let's get active. Let's get things going. And maybe the same for TheRayShadow here, Myth. The Palau so strong early in the game. 3 sets of beads to burn through. Have to imagine Pred's a viable early target for this Daji.
Yeah, Pred's an amazing target. I think if you're able to close gap now, you're going to find the pull on Pred's guaranteed. TheRayShadow's so close. Don't go back to base. Oof.
That would have been perfect.
Just as they're stepping up, too. That's a tough situation.
Would have been perfect. Now Panvich and Rapio. Considering a blue buff invade and get it.
Wow.
Mark very close to securing the blue. But instead it's Tier plus Thor equals objective steal here on the second or third rotation.
Yeah, Mark stuns his own blue buff while backpedaling, puts himself out of range on auto attack, whiffs auto to the air, and Panvich is like, word, I got it.
Now ultimate's traded in duo, but Predss locked down underneath the Tier 1 tower. You gotta be so careful. Stepping up, not only to an Athena under tower, of course you're gonna get taunted in there, and you don't have beats. Also remember, AicyD on the Ishtar will lock you down in a couple of different ways. That's an early first blood for Thunderhead. Give it over to the ADC and a good start.
But I understand the idea there. Predss wanted to get active before Galadriel and AC were able to tick over to level 5. Does so pretty well. I believe it's actually the kill that gives over level 5 to Thunderhead's dual lane. But
Yep.
getting that aggressive that far into the tower against the matchups that you've already highlighted, pretty easy for Thunderhead to turn it around if they aren't dying immediately off the CC. And considering Davey hasn't gone back to base just yet, just sitting on that spiked gauntlet, doesn't exactly have a whole lot of power output just yet. I'm thinking Thunderhead loves their odds in team fights like that. So, all of a sudden, the Chaos team, slight advantage over the dual lane. Considering how that game had started, with that purple buff invade from Predss, putting pressure on the red and green as well, that's massive for Thunderhead to turn things around.
What gap do you think is closer? The gap from Hex Mambo and Ravens, and I'll see if Galadriel will be okay here. Should be, dashes away. So Hex Mambo and Ravens, they're the favorites in the EU SCC.
Yeah.
The gap from those two teams to the Aaru Scorpions, or the gap from the Aaru Scorpions to Thunderhead. Which do you think is a closer matchup?
Oh, man. I think Scorpions and Thunderhead might be closer than Ravens and Scorpions.
I actually think I agree. I think, at least the way they've been playing Hex Mambo and Ravens, so difficult to beat. And that makes this matchup very important for both the Scorpions and Thunderhead.
Ooh, nice
close matchup as an ult to the right from Galadriel. Keep Mark potentially a bit more safe. Again, this is blue buff pressure. Maybe an area of the map the Aaru Scorpions feel like they've got an opportunity to fight. Predss again underneath one of these towers just gets taunted back, and now Rapio takes some tower damage as well. 0 for 2 on tower dives are the Aaru Scorpions, and that's given Thunderhead a fantastic start. And so now not only is it over in the dual lane where AicyD's got a 1-kill lead, and potentially another.
What?
Davey's got to use the beads. Should get out of this okay. No ultimate on either of the two carries. But now it's also happened on the right side of the map. Mark with 2 kills and assists across the board for Galadriel.
Yeah, I mean, Predss, when you die on your own in the dual lane, fine, you know, you made a mistake. This time you baited your jungler into it, right? Things are starting to bleed into the rest of the map. The Aaru Scorpions probably going to leave initiation up to Rapio or Panvich for the foreseeable future. Let Predss take a back seat, have him play in the back line, use bolster defenses, just play appeal-style areas, because so far, having given over 100% of the kills in enemy tower, pre-10 minutes, a bit wild. Thunderhead essentially just handed a couple of free kills. What'd you call them? Unforced errors.
Unforced errors, and happening early to the Aaru Scorpions here. This one, just a good dive from Thunderhead. Couple tower shots, chunked down TheRayShadow. We are going tower diving here in game 1. It's paid off for Thunderhead up to this point. They're the ones being dove. And how about an 8-minute Gold Fury call from Thunderhead?
It's going quick.
The SOC team with nothing to lose have pulled out the Gold Fury. They should confirm this objective before Predss gets close. And there's no answer. My goodness. Thunderhead simply outpacing the Aaru Scorpions now. Now, Panvich still has a decent grasp over on the solo lane here. Myth has consistently been invading these blues. Those 2 kills for Mark are carrying a lot of weight right now as far as golden experience go. And stacking up Book of Thoth over in that lane as well.
Yeah,
Terra's going to be swinging.
I was so surprised. I looked down, I was like, Book of Thoth, what? Yeah, he just had gold off the double kill to finish up the item. I mean, your power output's going to be way higher. You actually have decent power scaling on Earthen Fury, so the ultimate from ItzMarc, I think, going to be very impactful in some of these team fights. Otherwise, Damage output from Terra, not exactly something you generally want to itemize towards, but considering how quickly he was able to build it up, I don't hate it.
Galadriel has already
he's out.
used Dash and Taunt. Ooh.
Hey, he's back.
Predss, smart play, throws out the ultimate before Galadriel gets away.
And he's out.
That would have, well, I'll hold that question. Gunter uses I'm a Monster, and TheRayShadow again will tank up the tower. So that's a nice ult for ult trade over in mid. Ults everywhere. No kills dropping though, but the Aaru Scorpions trying to remain active. This will be a 2v2 over in duo for the Scepter, and it looks like the Scorpions got it, but would be zoned out from actually going back to pick it up. Does Ares ult go the entire map? If Athena had gone all the way right.
As far as you want to. You could pull someone back from base. Like, they can head back to base because Ares ult doesn't apply damage on first hit.
Right.
You can just pull them out of base.
Man, all right, so I got a little taste of it just back across the lane. Didn't pay off, but.
You might see it a couple times this game. It's pretty standard, I think.
Well, I haven't seen Ares versus Athena as a matchup maybe ever. But small something to look out for later on in this game. Near steal there from Galadriel. That one won't end up dropping down. And finally, Mark is able to get a blue buff quietly. Panvich has just applied pressure, seemingly on cooldown every time that blue buff is up, but instead have to be settling for the Totem of Ku this time around.
I think doesn't even get that just yet. Once you get a couple more stacks on ItzMarc, this lane's going to turn around entirely. Already wave clear, starting to favor the Chaos side and Soul lane. Duo's been doing pretty well as well. The Aaru Scorpions have got great setup and great scaling and team fight. I love how their composition is built around facilitating Gunter on the Scylla. Rapio, Panvich, Predss all have really confirmable CC.
Yeah.
That'll make I'm a Monster a bit easier to connect. But with Thunderhead's late game scaling entire draft, the Hell, all the healing from ItzMarc as well, TheRayShadow on this Daji, putting constant threat on CC immunity. With the early game going as it has, and it has gone quickly, 3,000 now to Thunderhead, potentially a bit more if they pull out this Pyromancer. Aaru Scorpions have got to be ringing some alarm bells. They need to be concerned about just how strong this draft from Thunderhead is going to be in about 10 or so minutes.
Gunter, I don't think realized at first that Mark was around the corner. That's one rotation. Remember, somewhat squishy is this Terra, and finally the Aaru Scorpions on the board. Now a pal out from TheRayShadow will pull a couple back in. Predss still with the ultimate. I think the Aaru Scorpions, the way this game has gone, let's take the one, let's get out, let's not do too much. Because we have done too much in the past.
Yeah, Mark figuring out real quick that he's not allowed to walk up on Gunter. Gunter already full stacked on the Book of Thoth, Soul Gem finished up, and not a shred of magic defense for this Terra solo. If you want to dive someone else.
Galadriel jumped on by Panvich as Gunter has really started to carry the weight for this Aaru Scorpions team. TheRayShadow has stepped too far forward, but so is Rapio, and it's tilted back, 1-for-1. AC low, and AC dead as Panvich, on his way out of solo lane, sends AC back to base, and a quicker journey for the carry to lane.
Yeah, Thunderhead actually choose to pull the objective there, force Aaru Scorpions forward, but considering how that fight had started, you'd expect them to try and drag out the engagement, maybe utilize the healing from Renegon, while the Aaru Scorpions have the onus with the initial pick to actually look towards the objective itself. So instead, it's an easy turnaround for him. Panvich in particular, great target selection, just closes gap onto Icy so easily the entire time Icy's in that fight. Davies just farming, getting a bit of that lead back in his court. Takes the wave in left, rotates mid, takes the wave there, and then just heads back because the fight had already been won. No real opportunity to look at the Pyromancer just yet. And all of a sudden, the Aaru Scorpions, who had stumbled early on, right the ship a bit. And who would have thought? All it took was taking fights outside the towers.
That's right, we needed to scrap in a better position. And for Icy, that's an unfortunate rotation out. Was a 2-level lead over Davy. Davy didn't even bother with that fight on the right side of mid. Stuck around in lane, farmed things up, and so the Cupid has closed up that gap just a little bit as well. Was a pretty decent itemization discrepancy over in duo. Davy just with the tier 1 light blade where Icy had fully completed in Executioners. That's now stabilized just fine. So the Aaru Scorpions get a second lease on game number 1 here. A lot of that revolving around Rapio rotating in there as well. Thor had to pump the brakes a bit after a couple of failed ganks earlier on, but now Brawler's beat stick, Jotun's Wrath, little flat penetration to start off the build myth. Should be in a pretty strong spot.
And Rapio's been one to play Thor for as long as I've been following this guy's career. Back in the console days, I used to tussle with him, and he was playing Thor back then.
Oh, console days.
Yeah, console days. It's been a while, man. I watched the SCC.
Whoa!
Massive Rapio fan. Big fan of this as well. Panvich doing his best Deathwalker impression. Unfortunately for him.
Half of one.
No way he kills
But goes up and over. I was going to say, I don't know if you want to pull in Panvich, but watch out. Rapio will dunk down. No connection there. This is what we talked about. When we talk about tier being so disruptive, even something like that, a couple squishy targets, you half health them, and you get things rolling. The Oni Fury pulled should be confirmed here by the Aaru Scorpions. No mistake on this one by the SCC team. But now SOC on the chase. ItzMarc.
Oof, great
Looking
ult.
for Predss, who is slowed, uses his pull. Sends some damage back to Mark. Ladriel will make their way over to the left side. So ends up being a pretty clean pull from the Aaru Scorpions, a chase down from Thunderhead after the fact, and now we split the Furies 1 for 1.
Yeah, great aggression from Rapio. Even in not connecting on the kills, at least prevents the back from two members of Thunderhead, creating a situation where you've got eyes on two and you know they won't be there for defense. Aaru Scorpions wisely use that time to pull the Gold Fury. Otherwise, just got to continue singing the praises of Panvich, who essentially does it all on his own to start off that aggression. Had it been anyone besides Hell in mid, or maybe an Afro, he's getting at least one kill there. But the sustain from Hell, the CC immunity that she was able to afford to TheRayShadow, made it a bit too difficult for Panvich to secure that. But with his itemization leaning the way it is, Wingblade now finished up, he's going to have that movement speed style of tier with a little bit of damage with Glad Shield. Feels like Panvich is going to be a real disruptive factor in some of these team fights. Dude's going to be a problem.
Which is important after his solo lane opponent was given 2 very early kills. Thought the Terra might run away with that lane. Now it's a 2-level lead for the tier. It makes it so disruptive not only in fights, but the mobility and the ability not only to engage, but to disengage puts you in the enemy team's jungle more often than not. Now Mark, gonna say, Myth, still pretty squishy, and a 3-man stun won't matter. Not when Rapio is looking for you. No chance. Saw the surrender vote pop up. Makes some sense. Mark gets the tier 1 tower, gets dove. This one won't go through. Not when the game is in contest as it is.
It's essentially dead even, if we're being honest.
After this Pyromancer, it effectively will be.
So, maybe a frustrated F6 call from ItzMarc there. Has no one to blame but himself, though. Completely squishy Terra pushing tower 16 minutes in against a global composition. But, c'est la vie. Not a big deal. Panvich tries his best to defend the red buff on his own. Unsuccessful, but the fight could go any way.
Ooh, decent Fields of Love starts this one off for the Aaru Scorpions. Into the pull from Predss, into the Palo, into the cleanse, into the beads. All of it used. And so Thunderhead disengaged this time. So it's beads used by Icy. And no pull in onto the Hell. Aaru Scorpions not for lack of trying.
Man, get you a homie like GunTTeRR. Predss lands the ultimate, and GunTTeRR says, I'm shooting no matter what I see. No escape is a misnomer, unfortunately, for GunTTeRR, but if it weren't, he was landing that shot every time.
You need to see it. You need to see the follow-up, right? Especially when the setup is as perfect as it could have been. But again, we've talked about how the cleanse, the beads, those types of things will make life hard for Predss, and no escape on this Ares throughout the course of this game. I was a bit worried for the Aaru Scorpions. Still am. Thunderhead have been able to disengage nicely some of these fights, but it feels like the scales have tilted a bit, Myth, from being Thunderhead forcing the issue early, or maybe capitalizing on the tower dives early, to now, even though the Scorpions aren't grabbing a whole bunch of kills, they're still the ones playing more aggressively, and Thunderhead are the ones backpedaling.
Yeah, Thunderhead playing a very reactive style. TheRayShadow could close gap here. Should win this 1v1. Rapio forced to retreat. No more chase potential means he will make his way out of there with ease. Thunderhead, though, having forced him back, have some opportunities, could try and play aggressively in mid. GunTTeRR in some trouble as Icy now dove. Gets some help from Athena, though.
This will be a 2v2, but Davey will not live to see the end. Predss being chased. He's going to run face first into a hell if he somehow gets out of this one. Thunderhead, again, answer back. The Scorpions start that fight. Thunderhead simply just have a better answer. Galadriel on the ult back in, flips that back, now has Emperor's armor, so if we were under the tower at all, that was going to feel just fine. Another swing and a miss for the Scorpions.
Thunderhead might be headed straight for the Fire Giant here. We're still 10 seconds away from Pred's respawn. 4 stacked on right, 5 with Hell in mid. It takes about 10 seconds to walk from Fountain to Fire Giant. I like this call. Force the fight, keep him off balance.
GunTTeRR has I'm a Monster, though, and Crush, some great secure tools. Should be your favorite secure in this game. Double root from Mark, but double get out between Rapio and Panvich. Looks like Thunderhead will just have to settle for the Greater Scorpion. The respawn from the Aaru Scorpions now roll back through. Again, far from game-breaking, game-ending type fights from Thunderhead. Just a couple thousand gold here or there. Haven't seen this full power from Rapio in a little bit. Finishes up Heartseeker as Tier 2 Titan's Bane as well. Gets the bubble off Galadriel. That's a small win. And Anvil of Dawn here could really find the backline unless the fight is over before it really begins. Now Pred's walking forward, has no escape. Will use it here. GunTTeRR awaiting for the pal to finish. I'm a Monster hasn't been used. And TheRayShadow off the backside. Rapio at full HP. In full damage in the build. Starting to swing. A crush up and over. Catches icy. And that'll be a double for your Thor.
Yeah, TheRayShadow just got distracted the entire fight trying to shut down GunTTeRR, who walks in circles around him. Meanwhile, the rest of the Aaru Scorpions able to dive very successfully. Rapio, a couple of great walls. Phenomenal initiation from Predss as well. And Thunderhead, in what was essentially a 4 versus 5, just didn't really stand a chance there. And considering the pacing of the last, 3 minutes of this game, Thunderhead get the 2-man pick on left, rotate towards Fire in a position to force fights there. Aaru Scorpions on respawn, immediately walk over to the left and force that entire engagement. It looks to me like just a bit of experience gap here. And I'm not talking about the resource, not levels on board. It's more so the Aaru Scorpions playing with the experience of knowing when they can force these fights, where to do it, how to do it safely, and Thunderhead just not quite able to keep that pace.
I'm not sure Thunderhead have forced a single fight this game. But the Aaru Scorpions have been stepping forward, and it's just been answers that have worked out for Thunderhead. Suppose not too surprising. You got a Tyr, you got a Thor, you got an Ares. It's what you want to be doing. The Fields of Love from Davey have also worked out quite nicely. Like this from Rapio, though. Keep sending out those walls. Get the bubble. Off Galadriel as often as you can. Now Predss is going to be in some trouble here. Actually walks back in now, has no escape.
Triple.
But it'll be a triple dunk from Rapio. That is nuts from the Aaru Scorpions. 3 stuns and 3 kills. And it's over to the FG for the Scorpions.
Just an ideal situation there. Predss, great jukes, avoids every single bit of that pal out, walks back in. And once everybody from Thunderhead sees him walk forward, they say, well, he can't walk out alive. We got to jump on this guy. We got to make sure he goes down. Rapio mutters to himself from the heavens, checkmate, dunks down on 3. Easy stuff, man, for this Thor. And that's
is that
something,
an anime mutter, you think?
Oh,
Like
dude,
a
he
little under
adjusted his
breath?
glasses,
Right.
it shimmered in the light.
Checkmate.
Yeah, checkmate. Got him. Owadida.
He jumps down, gets 3 stuns, get 3 kills. Then earlier on around the Fury, that's what I was talking about. I was like, look, Rapio has so much damage in this build. We just haven't seen the Thor flex those muscles
Just
in a
gotta
little
let
bit.
this man cook.
He did. And the meal is done. It's finished. The game not finished, but starting to get there if the Aaru Scorpions can expand on this gold lead comfortably. Something about Thor this weekend so far, Myth, has just been a driving force in these matchups, and it has not quite been that same force in the SPL.
Well, the difference is Thor is really, really good as an individual play. When you are allowed to make mechanical difference plays in 1v1s on map or catch rotations or play on the edge of team fights, Thor is really strong. And the answer to it is like just a formidable amount of coordination. You got to be really aware of when Thor's initiating, where he's standing, how these walls are going to start to pan out. So at the admittedly slightly lower level of play that is the SCC, Thor's going to look a bit better.
Yeah, looks fantastic for Rapio here. At 7-2 and 2. And then a Hydra's at the end of the build as well. Lord help whoever Rapio ends up turning their eyes towards. And GunTTeRR's really far underway in their build as well. Divine Ruin for some of that anti-heal that we talked about, also penetration. And then an Ob Shard. I fear for the squishies on Thunderhead. And even Galadriel, who's supposed to be a bit tankier. You get Thebes, you get the bubble, Emperor's Armor. Mark maybe thinking twice about Book of Thoth, Divine Ruin, Manticore spikes early in the build. I'm not saying a comeback can't happen, but there's overwhelming fight presence from the Aaru Scorpion that is now, really for the first time this game, backed with an actual gold lead.
We haven't seen Thunderhead fight as 5, though. Every single engagement, every team fight has been 4 versus 5. One member split pushing or one member on the opposite side of the map. So now with the game simplified, Thunderhead has a much easier time leveraging the entire strengths of their composition.
Oh no. Oh no, I'm seeing it again. Okay, no. There were a lot of grouped up members of Thunderhead. I was wondering if the tier and SCC had some type of synergy with one another. Panvich does force Thunderhead back, and no escape, followed up on this time by GunTTeRR, and the I'm a Monster will strike pay dirt. Thunderhead reeling, Thunderhead decided, and it's the Aaru Scorpions taking game 1.
I love the idea from ItzMarc, sees Panvich grouped up, has that same premonition that you did, like Deathwalker moment, question mark, I gotta at least buy some space for my team. Walks in 1 versus 4, survives for a good long while, but only as long as essentially a full squish Terra can. Trades out his life, does prevent the team fight from going immediately in favor of the Aaru Scorpions, but doesn't quite work out when you're playing into a deficit like that. And from there, the Aaru Scorpions take it cleanly.
Yeah, it really had to do with the Scorpions cleaning up their game, right? I mean, think early, we're 2 tower dives away from a Scorpions lead early on. Ends up being 3 kills gifted over to Thunderhead that set them off on a really good start. Eventually, though, come group up time, that's where the Scorpions set themselves apart.
Yeah, it was really just confidence. It reminded me of how the Jade Dragons approached some of their deficits.
The Aaru Scorpions are as good as the Jade
in execution,
Dragons.
but in idea.
Aaru Scorpions are as good as the Jade Dragons, says Myth. That means world's favorites, potentially. My goodness, that's high praise from Myth with me on the cast here. It's the Aaru Scorpions, Jade Dragons V2, taking game 1 over Thunderhead. We'll see if they can go back-to-back in game 2, coming up next.
number 1 goes to the SCC squad this time around. Aaru Scorpions in about 25 minutes are able to close out game number 1 up against Thunderhead. And kind of going into the pre-game discussion that we were having, you know, making sure to keep Panvich at bay, making sure to keep the solo laner down. Well, that was kind of part 1 of it, Gormizer. The second part was also making sure that Rapio doesn't go completely out of control over onto there. I mean, these teams are fighting for their opportunity to make it to the SWC group stage, and one thing that you can buy in preparation for the SWC, or if you just want some cool stuff, is the digital loot pack. So make sure that you grab that one out. You get the Atlantis Leviathan's World Championship skin for Gilgamesh, as well as a couple of other great skins out there and available for this digital loot pack. So make sure that you pick that one up before you may not have an opportunity to do so in the future. On sale right now with the Atlantis Leviathan's Gilgamesh and plenty of other great content out there. But again, making sure that Panvich is shut down, making sure that Rapio doesn't become a problem. And unfortunately for Thunderhead, Gormizer, Rapio became a problem. 8-1 on the Thor to close out the game. Massive triple dunk over on the right side of the mid lane map. Turns into a triple kill for him, sets up for Fire Giant. And that's the beginning of the end for Thunderhead.
Yeah, I mean, not only did Rapio get to have a great game, GunTTeRR, even though I think there was one, like a couple of Scylla ults, there was, let's call them warm-ups, and then eventually it didn't matter, because at the end I think it was 4-0-9. And also, you know, you kind of lead this with, you know, us talking about the fact that you need to shut down Panvich. Even that part wasn't that successful, right? I mean, it was kind of there, but nowhere near as much as it needed to be. And like you said, there was just too much going on. The jungle here, Rapio specifically, kind of reminding us why exactly their name has been at the forefront of the SCC jungle in Europe for a long time. I mean, what a great Thor game.
Oh, this one.
Brilliant dunks. And I think this might be the one you were just talking about, right? Where it's just a really, really beautiful drop down. And I mean, what are you going to do about that? Nothing.
Don't stand there.
You just die, you cry. And that might have been what feels like the final nail in the coffin. But I'm going to give some hope to Thunderhead. And that is that not too long ago, about 3 hours, your counterparts, Personnel, lost the first game of their set and were able to turn it around. And it was a pretty devastating blow to them as well. So we'll see what kind of bounce back they have. The difference is, though, I think that this one, you know, this draft, if it falls behind, isn't going to do too much. Meanwhile, on the other side for the Scorpions, if that draft gets ahead, it's going to do incredibly well, as we saw. I mean, Tier going 2-0-9, 4-0-9 there for GunTTeRR, but 8-2-4. Predss with 15 assists. I have to give him the shout out because my brain instantly wanted to just throw the duo lane off to the side because it really was the 3 on the right-hand side that made the big difference. I think for Thunderhead, you just didn't have as many open opportunities. I mean, Terra's nice, and I mentioned this. I like the matchup, but there's only so much you can do. Hell, depending on whose hands you're in, you're not going to bring the same capabilities that Scylla's bringing to the table. You're bringing them the heals. You've still got some decent damage, but not as much. It just feels like they had a lot of things that could have worked well, but unfortunately the way they were stacked together kind of diluted the pool a little bit for them and didn't give them that opportunity to punch forward the way they maybe should have.
Yeah, Aaru Scorpions able to squeak this one out for themselves, take game number 1, put themselves up in this matchup. But as you said, still some silver lining, some hope for Thunderhead, if they can make maybe some adjustments in their roster. I think you're right to say that once that kind of a draft falls behind, you know, Terra solo's not really getting off to the start you want. The Athena's starting to fall a little bit behind there, and the Hell not able to be as impactful. Maybe some change-ups in the picks and bans for game number 2. Could go a big way for Thunderhead. It worked out really well for the SOC squad in their second game. Personnel made a change-up in their draft.
Yeah.
Got a real nice kind of even spread throughout the early and the late stages of the game. We're able to pop off and take game number 2. See if Thunderhead can maybe adjust their draft to do something similar for themselves. But as we jump right in, immediately, Aaru Scorpions still going to be targeting out the support from Thunderhead, taking away this Maui pick.
And, you know, last time around, bans might change some things, but the first pick was the Cupid. And then immediately from the Cupid, it went into the Ishtar Athena, right? Then we got to see the Thor pickup and the Scylla pickup. So I wouldn't mind if you're going to let something through. I mean, Aaru Scorpions would more than likely be willing to first pick a Thor after a performance like that. But knowing that he has been, I don't want to call him hit or miss because it's kind of been hit or hit lately, but having that opportunity to maybe scoop that one away before they pick it up if they don't go for it first pick. If they do go for it first pick, then you know you still have options for yourselves like the Cupid, things like that. But that also all presumes that he makes it through to begin with. They ban it out. I think that just makes a lot of sense, right? With the way that this team was playing, with the way that Thor performed, there's a lot that was going on around it, but you got to shut down some things at its core, and that one feels like it just did too well to let him have it again.
The respect towards the Athena, now eating a ban alongside the Maui and the set for the Aaru Scorpions. Umoja, Thor, Ymir on the opposite side of the board for Thunderhead, making sure to remove some of the problems that arose, at least in the last game. Aaru Scorpions will stick to their guns by picking up Cupid first in this spot, which means Ishtar could very easily now go over towards Thunderhead, pick that one up for themselves, and maybe draft their support as well. Remember, that was the top two, at least for the Thunderhead in game number 1, was draft out their dual lane. Ishtar open. See no reason why you wouldn't grab it here. But at least for now, Gore, it's just going to be the Guan you selected for the team.
I don't mind this. Again, as far as early starts go, Guan puts you into a position where you can get aggressive as a team. You have good engage, good disengage, so you're safe and capable of leading your team. Prot Shred is there. You bring some of the healing. And as far as the Terra goes, it's all the same things, similar things at least, the Terra is going to bring. Except if you fall behind, you can still start a fight, right? Terra falling behind, you can try to start it, but good luck. I think that the Guan Yu, again, it can be shaky if the things in lane don't go well for him, but I like it a lot better just in general as far as the step up.
Well, the Terra that was drafted for the solo lane of Thunderhead in game 1 is now going to potentially go to the support, or maybe solo, of the Aaru Scorpions. It now trades hands. It'll be a double hunter composition this time around for the Scorpions, drafting the Cupid and the Cernunnos. So Cern going over to the mid role. So we want to talk about having, you know, the top 3 hunters kind of in the meta right now. All 3 of them now present in this game. Kind of makes me wonder if Thunderhead's going to go for a mage pick, maybe grab something like the Merlin that we've seen, or maybe match this hunter by grabbing a second one for themselves. We'll have to wait on that, because it is a Lancelot 3rd pick for Thunderhead, and now jumping into the bans. Immediately going to take the Hades off the table.
I like the idea of trying to match it, but with a mage, in the sense that if you get someone like the Merlin, because you mentioned him, you get the burn that a double hunter could provide while having the magical damage that a mage provides. It's not going to be the same burst that we maybe just saw out of the Scylla, but maybe gives you that opportunity to kind of balance things out. I think the Terra is going to be much more suited to over in the duo lane, which is what we've been seeing a lot more anyway, just in general. And I think that opens up a conversation. Also, because, you know, when you're going down the line for the next hunter that you could throw in mid, there's not like a lot of great ones. I guess you could just throw the Ishtar over there, grab, I mean, Danza Burrow has been like the 4th most popular hunter then, and throw him into the duo lane, but I like the idea of going for a mage, going for something magical, and trying to keep yourselves in that kind of conversation, team fight-wise, maybe more than objective-wise.
Yeah, something safe, so they can get some decent CC and burst damage, as Huang is going to cover all of that. Safety within his kit, great burst once you start getting a few items online, and great CC and displacement between his kit as well, so it kind of fits the bill for everything for Thunderhead there. Opposite side, though, TyeR and Fenrir now picked up. So a jungle Fenrir. We haven't seen Fen in some time, Gore. We see a couple moments here and there in the SPL. SCC, we saw a little bit out of players like Masskill like to go towards this god. How do you kind of feel about the Fenrir to round out the Scorpions composition?
Honestly, I like it, mainly because it's Rapio playing it, right? I think that there's been a lot of times that in my mind, I've seen a Fenrir and I go, well, I don't know. Blank, and blank are going to deal or be poor with it. You know, you've got a Huang who's got CC immunity. You've got an easy access to CC immunity, at least in the ult for the Lancelot. But Rapio has played a Fenrir into worse odds than this team and done phenomenally. I think it's a great way to round it out.
We'll see if Thunderhead can match their SOC counterparts and take us to game 3, or is this one going to fizzle out here? Can the Aaru Scorpions close that in game 2? Let's jump right in.
And we'll see if Thunderhead can keep up some of that early game pressure or absorb the pressure that the Scorpions are applying now. Big changes already, Myth. As Rapio is not going to get the Thor this game. That gets banned out. It'll be the Fenrir instead.
He's had the same 2 in the pool for a while now, Dave. This is, I'm getting deja vu from when I was playing against him in 2015.
Why are you saying that to me like I was saying the only thing he's played is Thor?
Well, no, I'm saying that it is Thor and Fenrir. I'm saying that.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're aiming that in general. You just happen to say my name at the beginning.
Well, I am casting with you, Dave.
No, but the way you said it, he always plays Fenrir, Dave.
Yeah, Dave.
Oh my goodness. And we're desking together and then casting together again later on. It's going to be a long day. As the purple buff is secured by Predss and Davy. Is that a teddy bear? I'm trying to figure out what the transformation is on Artio on this skin.
Some sort of plush, you know.
Yeah, I like it. Oh, okay.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, we'll take a breather on the old Sunder usage there by Predss. I think avoiding early game mistakes for the Scorpion is square one. Then on the flip side for Thunderhead here in game 2, applying some pressure early that doesn't involve the Scorpions tower diving you. You got to be the team that's getting a bit more active. Could be a good start here. You get a kill on the Predss, and it's happened. Icy with first blood for Thunderhead.
Yeah, Predss just walks up a bit too far and gets punished for it. And that's the simple truth of the matter, Dave. And there's not much there to evaluate and dig into, and I won't be doing it.
So live on air, you're going to say, I'm not doing my job. This is off to a miraculous
Wait, where'd
start.
you get that from?
Your job is to dive in and analyze what's going on.
What am I, a pool full of liquor?
Yeah, dive in. You probably don't even know what song that's from.
Tell me the name of the song right now.
Here's the thing.
That's what I thought.
No, because I'm trying to get you to do your job.
Yeah.
So, a million different ways you could go with this. Is it realistic that an Ishtar and an Artio get that much pressure early? TheRayShadow escapes. Will live. What does that now mean for the laning phase? Is there an opportunity for Predss and Davy to fight back? There's like 6 different things you could say, and you chose, I'm not going to say anything.
That's right.
Give me something. Is it realistic that an Ishtar and an Artio find pressure for a first blood, or do you think that's a misplay by the Scorpions?
I'm feeling a little bit railroaded here on my commentary.
I have to, because you said you're not going to do it otherwise.
Feels like you're kind of controlling me a little bit.
I have to.
I don't do well with authority figures, Dave.
All right, we're moving on from first blood. Sorry, folks, we don't get to know all the wonders.
Whoa!
within
Don't
Mistbrain.
insult the intelligence of our viewers as if they aren't fully aware.
Now,
of what's
over in
going
the mid
on.
lane, there was a near kill from Rapio on this Fenrir. Gunter as well applied a bit of pressure. And it was TheRayShadow who had to back away. Nif, what's your take on the jungle dynamic this game? A Lancelot on one side and a Fenrir on the other.
The second this Lancelot ticks over to level 5, that is a fight that Fenrir no longer wins, right? Massive cripple field into a god that is completely reliant on mobility for damage and escape. Could lead to a pretty difficult situation. In that situation, you're really just reliant on like Seething Howl. Maybe you go for a slightly auto attack style build, or it's Ragnarok on disengage, try and pull TheRayShadow off of that horse. But as far as pacing goes, both of these gods are very capable of getting involved in the early. Fenrir, of course, one of the highest DPS level 3 gods that you can get out of the jungle, especially if you decided to max out Brutalize. And Lancelot, we know what he's capable of, given just a few levels as well. Now that we're both at 5, or TheRayShadow is rather, I expect Lancelot to start establishing pace.
Rapio, of course, will have CC immunity with Ragnarok, also beads. Gunter, beads. Davy will have the beads. So, early lockdown from Thunderhead will be mitigatable. Now, for your Aaru Scorpions, your Rapio, you're looking at TheRayShadow with no beads. You're looking at the Huang over in mid with no beads, and then potentially Galadriel could be an option here. So if you really maximize the uptime on this ultimate, and you can find someone in the next 30 seconds or so, absolutely opportunities for this Fenrir. Instead, he'll turn his eyes towards solo. Mark dashes through, but the cavalry charge likely would have been a bit of safety anyway. Remember, in game 1, Myth, it was a lot of blue buff pressure from Panvich. Might be a more difficult time this time around with Guan Yu in lane.
Yeah, Guan Yu gonna have a much easier time fighting into this tier, so expect Panvich to win out on self-sustain. Tier's got really, really strong self-sustain, but as we start to itemize a little bit further, ItzMarc with the Breastplate of Valor should be able to match a good deal of that. Talu Assault, a phenomenal tool to deal with Fearless at that, so not exactly a situation where Panvich can fight in consistently. Surprised to see Panvich go for the Breastplate build himself, though. That's not exactly standard for the tier. Glad Shield, pretty strong. We've seen some of the Hammer Tree come back as well. Breastplate of Valor in first slot gives over a good deal of CDR, which will help you match the sustain that ItzMarc has got, but feels as if you'd have the ability to look towards those blue buff invades like we had seen in the previous match, had it been just more standard itemization in first slot.
Now, in game 1, we talked a lot about the Scorpions and how much they might have to itemize into anti-heal. Ended up being the proper amount. healing ultimately made almost no difference for Thunderhead by the end of game 1. Now you're looking at the Scorpions. They've got a Terra, also a Cupid. Little sustain for Panvich and likely in build for a couple of the other members of the Scorpions. Fenrir. And Galadriel is thinking, I want this Ankh right off the bat. Brawler's Beat Stick immediately for TheRayShadow. And so from item 1 onward, it looks like Thunderhead will be limiting healing as much as they can.
That is dangerous, though, for Galadriel. I suppose you're allowed to pick up Ankh, considering the threats from the Aaru Scorpions are all coming from physical damage dealers. Pred's not exactly doing a whole lot on Terra support to threaten you into looking towards any sort of utility and magic defense. So instead, sovereignty in first slot. You're allowed to pick up Ankh because you're not so worried about the Ragnarok from Rapio. Generally, we'll see supports go towards beads in first slot up against this Fenrir, but he's just going to hedge his bets and say there's not enough damage there.
Could be a 3v3 over the Greater Scorpion. Instead, Thunderhead will backpedal their way away. Now remember, Icy, at a point in game 1, had like a 2-level lead over Davy, just rotated into a fight, ended up dying, and Davy was left alone to farm up and stabilize over in the duo lane. So absolutely a win condition here for Thunderhead in what was a very closely matched early game. Is Icy and this Ishtar, who could be in a very, very good spot. But stacking items for both the mid laners, likely meaning it'll require some jungle pressure up to this point. Obviously, you're going to have to change your gameplay a little bit if you're Rapio Myth. I mean, on the Fenrir, you can still get active, you even want to get active, but can't quite Anvil of Dawn directly onto someone, but can force their ultimates out. Mark has to use the cavalry charge, and it's just Rapio walking into that lane. And so, a bit of value for the Scorpions on Rapio.
Yeah, the instant cavalry charge cancel to deal with the brutalize, prevent some of that DPS from coming his way. If I'm Rapio, walk into the jungle, loop around, pick him up with the Ragnarok. Now this Guan Yu doesn't have an answer to your ultimate. Displace him. Further displacement from the tier off the tail end. It'll be a little while until Guan Yu's allowed to get active on his own keyboard. My man's not allowed to press buttons for a good deal of time there. Should be another rotation from Rapio towards solo.
Good news for the Scorpions is we have not dove towers and given over a few kills in the first few minutes of this game. Have applied a bit of easy pressure towards Thunderhead, but haven't converted that into any kills. And that first blood over in duo hasn't resulted in a resounding lead. And you're spot on here, Myth. Rapio sticks around. Mark dashes through. Will be okay, but Galadriel gets the dash red and Asunder connects. This is an easy kill for the Aaru Scorpions. And once again, an overstay from a support trying to drain the obelisk ends up costing him. The Aaru Scorpions get a kill on their carry.
Easy enough, man. Galadriel, I like the idea, right? Keep leveraging some of that early pressure. You know this Artio is feeling very safe considering current itemization. But the overstay, I suppose just kind of thinking Rapio's on the opposite side, so there's no way there'd be a rotation strong enough to deal with you. Miscalculation on the aggression, but even then, does lead to Thunderhead picking up the obelisk charge faster. Trebuchet should spawn up very shortly. Might still be a pretty valuable trade. I don't hate it overtly.
Not yet. We'll see if this Trebuchet is gonna...
It's gonna take out a Phoenix.
Knock down a Phoenix, maybe. In fact, it might just get the Titan. We'll see. In which case, not worth for Galadriel by any means. Now, this has been happening from early on in the game, and it's TheRayShadow sending pressure to left this time. Predss stunned. Dashes away. Galadriel considering a tower dive. But remember, there's healing for Predss, healing for Davy. And just enough of it, despite the Ankh. That'll keep the Aaru Scorpions duo lane alive. And an unfortunate missed gank there from TheRayShadow. Missed in the sense that it didn't grab any kills.
We'll see.
Yeah.
His second burst, same as the first? No.
No. And it's TheRayShadow picking up a kill onto Davy. And that one's simple enough for the Lancelot. Now looks like a purple buff invade for Thunderhead, but GunTTeRR on their way over from mid. It's a total playstyle swap in game 2 from GunTTeRR. Instead of Scylla, big burst mage damage, just scaling up on the Cernunnos. Cavalry charge away from Mark. Is there a lockdown going to be close enough? Rapio does not have Ragnarok anymore.
He's fast, though.
Speedy. Panvich tanking up the tower. No, Mark speedy enough as well. Rapio has now tried this a couple of times. Most of this Fenrir pressure has been over on right, but still leaves empty-handed.
And it's not going to be an easy lane to gank going forward either. ItzMarc can continue to itemize towards that physical defense, gets to double dip against his lane opponent and the jungler. But Rapio doesn't exactly have easy targets anywhere on the map. It is very difficult for him to go anywhere and just say, this is an easy pickup. Galadriel, very tanky already. Maybe even moving in towards Witchblade in that second slot would deal with this double hunter composition very well, as well as the auto attacks from Fenrir. So makes sense to me that he's trying to play through what was a pretty consistent win condition in game one. Facilitate Panvich. We saw what this tier was capable of doing in some of those mid-game team fights, invading back camps, blues. If you can put him in that position again, then Rapio can start maneuvering the map heading elsewhere.
And really similar pacing from both junglers. Just TheRayShadow's been over on left a little bit more often. TheRayShadow has had one of those ganks actually pay off. And so about a half level to a 1 level lead for Thunderhead and their jungler here in game number 2. Remember, this is an elimination game, so whoever ends up losing this best of 3, they're headed home. The winner moves on to face the loser of the matchup in this group a bit later on here today. So still a lot to play for both of these teams. And it's the Aaru Scorpions with a bit of momentum to start off the set. But Thunderhead kills-wise here in game 2 has really started to make their mark. Now the difference is, has not resulted in a gold lead. This is a good opportunity for the Aaru Scorpions. They'll dive on Renegade, and simply no chance for that Huang. The pressure funnels its way in mid. Panvich drops the blue buff, picks it up on the invade. Rapio now here on right. Maybe force Thunderhead to fight, but kill plus blue buff invade. Fantastic rotation here recently. Ragnarok pays off. Wild Hunt drops in. TheRayShadow turns around 1 kill, but now it's a 3 versus 2 for the Aaru Scorpions on right.
ItzMarc completely and disengaging. Galadriel doing the exact same, and the Aaru Scorpions, well, they're not going to stick around. I thought maybe we'd see them force that Pyromancer, try and take that engagement. This is something we got to get used to seeing, though. icy's had the better end of this matchup just about the entirety of this game. Takes away the purple buff, forces out the ultimate from Davy, and walks himself out of there, pushing himself about a half level up.
It's where Panvich has found pressure, Miff, and TheRayShadow was close by to answer at that time. And the little scrap ends up being a 1-for-1 on the side of the map. Maybe the Aaru Scorpions feel like they can find pressure. That's potentially where the tier feels comfortable and finally able to force a fight. But TheRayShadow has been able to answer back quite nicely on this Lancelot a couple of times. So difficult to outpeel a horse that's charging in on you. So 2 kills early for TheRayShadow. And Thunderhead, this SOC team, continues to put up a fight against the number 3 EU SCC team. Remember, it was an early Gold Fury pull in game 1. Renegade gets rooted under the tier 1, but that's just Huang will float away and be okay. Don't think it's going to be the 8-minute Gold Fury pull this game, but maybe just around the corner. Now it's Pyromancer for the Aaru Scorpions. ItzMarc close by, galloping forward is TheRayShadow. Pyro low, and confirmed by the Aaru Scorpions. And TheRayShadow has gone around the backside of the fight, and that's right where he wants to be. First kill onto Predss, and GunTTeRR desperately searching for autos will find none. It's Pyro, yes, for the Scorpions, but they've lost 2 in trade.
What will Thunderhead do with those 2 gone, Predss and GunTTeRR off the map? icy's also had pressure in the dual lane, could potentially move in towards that Gold Fury instead. Your own blue buff looking pretty good here as well. I like the idea from Aaru Scorpions had their composition just had a standard mage. But because there is no dedicated confirmation for the objective, they have to drop it real low. It's essentially a coin toss. They're fortunate to win out on there. But because they have to wait so long and stand so close to hold aggro of the Pyro, it allows Thunderhead to move in and chase out consistently. Between ItzMarc and TheRayShadow, the gap close incredibly strong. And the engage just as strong as well. Purple buff invade again. Not certain which team was able to secure it this time. Gotta assume it's the Aaru Scorpions, yeah.
They'll step forward. Davey has green, so can't pick up the purple this time around. Thunderhead were very willing, again, in Game 1 to pull an early Gold Fury, but that was with a couple thousand gold of an advantage. And this game, you know, when you're on margins as thin as you're looking at here in Game 2, Gold Fury becomes very, very important, but also a dropped team fight around that Fury can really springboard the game. If nothing else, Myth, I think Thunderhead deserves some props. I mean, yesterday against the Highland Ravens, it was a very, very difficult set. Anyone playing the Ravens is going to have a hard time. But Thunderhead, and even in our first set of the day, SOC representatives have been able to stabilize themselves after a tough day number 1. Predss is going to feel some pain from those SCC representatives in mid. A Dueling Dragons.
No way.
Lock him
Okay.
down, nearly walked away. But Renegade has enough fadeaway damage. What's Panvich looking for here? Gets stunned in place by Galadriel. And a 2-minion Fearless from Panvich underneath the tier 1 tower disengages the fight.
Thunderhead now 5 strong with Predss dead for 15. Will make the rotation in towards the Gold Fury. Davey, Panvich, and Rapio in range to defend. GunTTeRR on the way from base. And the Gold Fury reset there.
Panvich gets a push on Icy, and Panvich living longer than Thunderhead maybe were intending. But the Gold Fury gets confirmed by Thunderhead nonetheless. It was so low. I wondered if the Scorpions had steal potential there, which just sat with a couple hundred HP and 100 damage from Cavalry Charge from Mark. Confirms the Gold Fury. And a big advantage for Thunderhead now. The big objective in the early game drops.
Can they disengage, though? This is looking like an overstay to me, Davey.
Rapio.
Good heart bomb. Rapio on the wraparound.
Rapio. Ragnarok. Icy in trouble. Instead, it's Galadriel who's picked up and sent back, but no clear line of communication on one individual target here from the Aaru Scorpions.
Predss is back.
Simply no one has been burnt down. Yes, Predss is back, but Predss doesn't have damage
Dueling
to
Dragons?
finish off any of these kills. Renegade a bit wide on the Dueling Dragons.
Gooma stomped.
And Predss walks in and dies. A forgetful last couple of moments from the Aaru Scorpions.
Thunderhead still relatively healthy. I thought it was an overstay, but potentially an understay now, considering they already have the minion wave in that left tower. Likely to take that as well. Instead, why test fate twice? Disengage. Play a bit safer here. Aaru Scorpions really running into the wall of Thunderhead has a whole lot of Fizz D. Need to figure out an answer to it soon. Renegade. He's got Celestial Flight. He can just float on out of there, and that's exactly what he does.
GunTTeRR, even 2 levels down, has a lot of damage. Gotta be a kill here. Aaru Scorpions need it. GunTTeRR gets it. And so, even, again, at a level discrepancy, GunTTeRR able to melt down the health bar of Renegade, who will just full buy a Soul Reaver. Hadn't gone back and spent up that gold in a moment or two. Rapio might appear to be alone, but it's anything but. Grand tournament in from TheRayShadow, and death thanks to Davey. Suddenly the Aaru Scorpions down in gold, but up in confidence. Will fight against Thunderhead, and across the map, notch 4 and even up the kills.
That is a psychotic initiation from the Aaru Scorpions. Rapio just walked up and said, I'm gonna press brutalize, do something about it. And Thunderhead, I suppose the response is, what'd you say? And then they die.
Yeah.
Clean stuff from the Aaru Scorpions, able to grab not only the red buff invade, but a tier 1 and tier 2 in mid, completely exposing that bird and removing a bastion of safety from Thunderhead. Generally around Pyro, around Gold Free, once you retreat, you head back towards the middle lane. Not exactly an option anymore. And potentially more on the table here for the Scorpions. Pyromancer pulled out. ItzMarc's got his work cut out for him. He wants to stop this one, and how can he with Panvich walking him down?
Very well, Pyromancer given to the Scorpions. Now Panvich may be feeling more comfortable just to go back to these blue buffs, steal them away. That's another one dropped by the tier. And unfortunately for Mark, has weathered the storm long enough, but the ability to do so much longer may be limited. So big 2-level turnaround for GunTTeRR here. Was a couple levels down to Renegade, now catches back up. Same with Davey. Remember, again, Icy was in control of that dual lane, but a good rotation through from Davey. Now finds himself at 2-1-3 and just a bit behind as far as experience goes, this Ishtar. But it was much, much worse a few moments ago. And so now really, Myth, it's the second time in 2 games where A good mid-game fight has just tilted things back to the Aaru Scorpions. It's about comeback potential now for Thunderhead. Wonder if they keep getting aggressive, keep looking for these fights, or they're hoping for a late-game push.
It feels like to me Thunderhead should be confident in their 5-on-5 engagement. Their draft, very strong. It's just about every single individual member of the Aaru Scorpions. Panvich and Rapio struggle against the multitude of cripples that Thunderhead have elected to pick up for themselves. Artio as well as Lancelot, even Ishtar to a certain extent. You've got the magic damage stack as well, so you really force the Aaru Scorpions to split their defense stack up. Just group up as 5, played a bit slower from here. Don't get picked around your own buffs, and I think Thunderhead can feel confident in their ability to take these fights.
Davey avoids everything. Can't say the same for Thunderhead in mid. Celestial Flight is just picking out a spot to land and die for Renegin. And unfortunately, this Huang has now been jumped on a few times in a row. Galadriel has safety of tier 1 and tier 2 tower. And also their AD carry, who's still pretty strong at this point in the game, to rotate on through. You can tell Aaru Scorpions communicating, trying to find exactly what they want to go for here. It's a lot of bobbing back and forth between duo, red buff. Do we go for tower? Are we searching for more kills?
We're waiting on Fury.
Suppose you are, which now respawns. Mark get brutalized by Rapio. Dashes away, and Ragnarok catches out Galadriel. And Gunter and Davey supply the last bit of damage in this fight. Long and drawn out. Still in favor of the Aaru Scorpions, while Panvich will control 2.
Panvich takes a whole lot of damage on his way out, though. Wingblade procced by ItzMarc's second ability. Means that the additional movement speed should allow him to disengage. Thunderhead just step up too early. If you know Aaru Scorpions are playing for the Gold Fury, there's no reason to try and retake space while they're sitting on your tower line. Wait for them to back up, wait for them to get to the objective and pull it, then all of a sudden you've got the unofficial 6-man helping you in the team fight, and the Aaru Scorpions have to contend with a mental stack. Do we want to deal with the objective? Do we want to deal with Thunderhead coming up to defend? But because Thunderhead step up so early in the fight, not only are they fighting at a numbers disadvantage, Renegon picked in mid just seconds beforehand, they're also fighting over nothing, and it's a fight they lost.
TheRayShadow going to get chased here, sure is. Little extra burst damage from Rapio on the end of it. Now the trend for is absolutely favoring the Aaru Scorpions now. In a back-to-back games, they've fallen behind a bit, but ultimately, big grouping team fight play has made the difference. And now fully in command of game 2. So if you're Thunderhead, you're starting to look left towards Pyro, potentially Gold Fury in the next couple minutes. Things that the Aaru Scorpions likely going to feel okay pulling out for themselves. You've got to decide whether that's worthwhile to give up or not.
You can't give up the Fire Giant, not from this position. 3,000 gold, not so sizable a lead that you are completely discounting your ability to take the team fight. Just wait for the Scorpions to pull it. Don't have to wait very long. It's done it. Let's regroup. Hasn't happened just yet. We're getting picked a bit too early.
Ooh, Mark rooted in place. Gunter on a rampage. How about the turnaround from the Cernunnos here in game 2? Was not the easiest of starts. And then pressure funnels through mid. Double stun in from Rapio. Say goodbye to TheRayShadow and Galadriel. It'll be the last time you see him for the next 30 or 40 seconds. And if the trend continues, maybe this event, because the Aaru Scorpions in all likelihood double back, burn down fire, and are in commanding control of the second game.
Not once in this set have we seen a 5 versus 5 engagement.
I don't think so.
The Aaru Scorpions have started every single battle with a pick. If it's Renegon in mid, maybe it's ItzMarc in solo, maybe Galadriel's trying to rotate in, get eyes on the objective. It doesn't matter who it is. The truth of it is that it's been someone every single time. And the Aaru Scorpions, they love their odds in a 5 versus 1, and probably also love their odds in the 5 versus 4 that they get immediately afterward. Take the Fire Giant, put it on all 5, remove the last tower from the soul lane. From here, you can back up, grab Pyromancer and the Greater Scorpions, head back to base, spend your gold, and it's textbook. Head over to the left side, take out that tier 2, and see if Thunderhead can muster a 5-man defense on Phoenix.
Not sure where you look, though, to get that. AicyD's been over on left the majority of this game. Still has not knocked down the tier 1 tower over in duo. And so this Ishtar now full build, no upgraded starter though, that's the difference. Will still be a force, but the rest of your initiation has crumbled over the last couple of fights. Now we have seen the Aaru Scorpions overextend once or twice in this set, so it could be too much being done underneath one of the Phoenixes. Potentially something there for a quick stun, quick turnaround from Galadriel, ItzMarc. The Scorpion's just so mobile, and their initiation's really been figured out. And this is where you get to critical mass. We've already been there, but for double hunter compositions, they will melt these structures. And Thunderhead won't have much time to find a defense if they don't act quick.
Just hide in Phoenix. Renegon is going to give me an anxiety attack with his fixation on standing where what used to be a tier 2 tower was. Let's play where the Phoenix is, and they've done so. Thunderhead properly take a step back, survey the land, and realize it won't be easy, but this is the first 5-on-5 we'll have an opportunity to see maybe.
Galadriel.
He's living.
Yeah, lives, but, you know, now your Phoenix defense is over as the Aaru Scorpions nearly get it all. That's a fantastic double stun from Icy. And Predss has Panvich lurking in the back line. Panvich won't take the initiation in, instead will take the free left side bird. So Thunderhead's decision made for them. Panvich goes back in, dueling dragons forced. Not doing much of anything. An easy left side Phoenix for the Scorpions.
Aaru Scorpions resustain with Fire Giant and heals. Pick up Galadriel. If at first you don't succeed, try again.
Ooh,
4-man stun though, he's out of there.
He is, but again, Galadriel now can't fight
He
because
went
this is
back
gonna
in.
happen. Rapio
Lived anyway?
walks forward, a gallop into the back. Icy gets a kill onto Predss. The closest fight we've seen from Thunderhead still favoring the Aaru Scorpions. Mid lane Phoenix lives with a sliver of HP. And the Scorpions would love to go back in, deal just the last bit of damage. But Icy, a threat, a ranged threat, and so is Renegon with the range poke that the Huang can provide.
Feels like with these ultimates coming back up, Rapio, GunTTeRR both halfway to theirs. Panvich access to the Lawbringer. Could get into that back line, spell some doom here for Thunderhead. This is a good call from Aaru Scorpions. Keep up your pressure. 20 seconds left on TheRayShadow. Minion waves here, and Phoenix just limping.
Up and over goes Panvich, and it's Icy in the back line that won't be able to turn any damage towards the Aaru Scorpions, but where's Davey? Dashes forward and ends up dying. And so some push pressure now limited by the Aaru Scorpions. You get left side mid lane Phoenix, but we will reset at least one more time. I suppose if you're gonna die, you still respawn before the next FG.
Respawn before Fire Giant. You've essentially perfectly timed that mid Phoenix, so there will always be some fire minion waves around this next Fire Giant dance. Great decision from the Aaru Scorpions, even in losing their lives. By taking out the bird and realizing Thunderhead haven't really got much they can do on map. Best case is this Gold Fury. That should likely go their way, barring a crazy steal from Predss. That's a phenomenal value trade for the Aaru Scorpions. They have won cleanly on map state, and now can head back to base in a body bag this time, but buy wards nonetheless and get ready for the Fire Giant.
Aaru Scorpions nearly steal away the Fury, but it's confirmed by Thunderhead. Unfortunately for Thunderhead, you're going to have two fire minion waves pushing down the least easy to deal with sides of the map when you're over by the Gold Fury. Panvich has done a great job. You know, kind of flown under the radar. We've talked a lot about Rapio, GunTTeRR, the big damage dealers in these last couple of games, but the tier for Panvich, I think, has just been disruptive in a way that hasn't loaded up the kills, but has still given the Aaru Scorpions a big leg to stand on. Thunderhead haven't found a way to deal with this tier yet in the backline.
Yeah, just very survivable. That movement speed stack in his build has made him very mobile as well. Has made it difficult for Icy and Renegon to follow up on this massive initiation from their three-man front line. Mark, TheRayShadow have gotten back there pretty consistently, but haven't had the damage they needed. If Renegon can maybe start some of these fights off with the dueling dragons, that would be it. Fire Giant pulled out. Thunderhead nowhere to be seen, and the Aaru Scorpions take it once more. Panvich, he's got the lockdown for Mark. Time to get ready for this right side Phoenix defense. Could be the last one of the set.
Oh no, that's a nice little wall there from Predss. Slows down the initial bit of the cavalry charge. Rapio brings Mark right back to the front of the fight. Double stun back in, and Davey has the last bit of damage needed. And now it's an Earthen Fury from Predss to keep this fight going. Thunderhead will back away. All 3 Phoenixes down. Left side's gonna respawn here shortly, but Aaru Scorpions concerned about it. Maybe should just instead look for the end. Renegon loses the beads. Panvich stunned in place. Finding open avenues of damage. Now the key for the Aaru Scorpions on the verge of knocking out Thunderhead from this event. Dueling Dragons rolls through. It catches out Predss, but Predss lives on. So does Rapio.
Titan's getting
and
hurt.
Now the AD carries look to the Titan, but no, stuns on the other side. But the Aaru Scorpions simply too strong, and they will 2-0 Thunderhead and knock them out of the event.
The Aaru Scorpions played with every single bit of confidence. Even in a deficit, it was the Aaru Scorpions forcing objective fights, walking into enemy camps. And when you're playing with that confidence, when you're playing with that concise nature, when you're grouped up as 5, against a team that isn't, things tend to go your way.
Yeah, good luck for the Aaru Scorpions now. I think rebuilding some of the confidence that may have been dashed away yesterday. You lose a set up against the Gladiators. And now give just a little more life to yourselves here in this tournament. Unfortunate weekend, ultimately, for Thunderhead, but when you look at how competitive this side of this group was, it was always going to be hard for the SOC team to string together a lot of wins. So should be proud that they made it to the event. But ultimately, it's the Aaru Scorpions and their tenure that win the day and win the set. They'll go on. Thunderhead will head home. That's it for Miff and I on this set, and we'll go back to the desk one more time to break it down.
So our second elimination of the day, this time unfortunately for the SOC squad, it ends up being them. Aaru Scorpions make their way in and continue their run through the lower bracket to see if they can make it to the second round of group play that's going to be happening a little bit later on. And a great way to do so, I mean, as kind of highlighted there by the cast Goremizer, it was a lot of early game aggression that came from Thunderhead, got them some good early picks. But unfortunately, as the game kept going through, Aaru Scorpions are doing a great job of finding a pick before they would go for a fight to give them those lopsided wins.
Yeah, and little moments like that, right? I mean, that is the easiest way to convert pick to team fight or to objective, right? And if you can get those consistently, well, then you start to take massive leads that really just start to feel in your favor. And again, you know, we get to see this kind of spread across the entire team for the Scorpions. But every one of them feels like I think they had a lot of confidence for good reason. Thunderhead keeps up pretty well. But it is a unfortunate, like you said, stagger and moments like that, right? Sometimes it's just one pick. One pick leads to 2, leads to 3. Sometimes full-on deicides, or in this case, just the game win. The Scorpions, though, I think kind of happy with it, right? Yesterday, really solid performance, needed something to be able to bounce back. Again, maybe some fight from Thunderhead here. But they needed a 2-0 win, needed a victory, I think, to look towards the future. Especially with the Ferrymen getting eliminated. You're now in this conversation where you know, we're looking at teams that are not just staying alive, but are fighting for their chance to make it into the top 4, which are fighting for their chance to make it to the final 2 to make their way to the group stages for a shot at Worlds. And I think if you're the Scorpions here, you needed a performance that was going to be convincing, and this one I would say is convincing enough, right? Challenged, but still capable of making it into the top 2. And keeping hopes alive for your team and their dream of potentially making it to the World Championship.
I think Rapio on this Fenrir kind of played it the best that he could given what he was fighting up against, the double cripple from this team, whether it be the consistent one from Galadriel or the ultimate from TheRayShadow. Makes it a little bit more difficult for a Fenrir to perform, but he and Panvich seemed to make it work out there. The carries, can't really say went unchecked. A couple of kills went their way early on in the game, but as we start pushing further, they stopped kind of getting paid attention to, and that's where we start to see these damage numbers really stack up. For someone like GunTTeRR, 35K. For him, 29,500. For iDavy over onto the Cupid. So this time around, this team, the Aaru Scorpions saying, you know what, Panvich, you had your time in the spotlight yesterday. You did pretty good. Have all the team kind of rally around and kind of bolster themselves up here. Predss even having a great performance on the Terra in game number 2, and kind of solidifying the Aaru Scorpions. And maybe giving them a little bit of validity that, yeah, we do deserve to have this 3rd seed spot that we have. We do still need to fight back in this tournament, because remember, they still have 2 big teams that they're going to have to potentially go through if they want to make it to the SWC group stage, that being Hex Mambo and the Highland Ravens. And that is no easy task to do when you have an undefeated team like Hex Mambo and a nearly undefeated Highland Ravens throughout there. We'll take a look at the bracket, see how the rest of our day and the rest of at least these couple of matchups will be going through. Aaru Scorpions with their win over Thunderhead will now await the loser of our final match of the day between the Highland Ravens and the Gilded Gladiators. Loser drops down to face the Aaru Scorpions tomorrow. Winner will move on into the advancing stage of the, what we'll call the elimination stage, at the very least out onto there. Remember, only top 2 from each group will move on into the third bracket, which will look pretty much exactly like this, but it will have the two teams from each group merged in onto their bracket. That's Group B. And over in towards Group A, so I'll have one more matchup in there to determine who's going to be dropping down to the loser bracket. That'll be our next matchup. Hex Mambo and the Niflheim Wargs, the #1 SCC versus the #6 SCC, the underdog of the Niflheim Wargs, found their win over Styx Ferryman yesterday to now put them up against Hex's defeat of Mambo. So now comes the question, Gorman. We saw what Hex Mambo did to Personnel earlier on into the week. That was a 2-0, like 30, 32 minutes of gameplay, maybe combined between their two games. Do we see Hex Mambo do the same to Niflheim Wargs, or do Niflheim Wargs maybe have a little bit of fight back? I think is the question that everybody's wanting to know.
I doubt that we're going to see the Wargs surrender at 15 and 16 minutes
Probably
respectively, so I assume it's going to be more fight. The question is how much more fight. I think that anybody that's going up against Hex Mambo, I mean, they're the team to beat right now. Luckily, you're still in kind of like the upper portion of this, so a loss here is on the end of the road for you. I think that that's kind of where their head needs to be at. It's looking successful. I know yesterday wasn't as clean as maybe we were expecting out of them. So just trying to kind of clean up some of that gameplay, come in, put on a good showing against Hex Mambo, maybe surprising some of us, or potentially falling down, but again, not out and having to face Personnel in the future.
Well, our second set is done, and we move on to our third. The #1 seed, undefeated Hex Mambo versus the Niflheim Wargs, coming up right after this.
Ready?